what's known as Tourette syndrome, Gilles de la Tourette syndrome. It's a neurochemical disorder that causes me to make sounds, expel air through my mouth, and have facial tics. Unfortunately, I can't control. I've had it since age 5. It's a genetically transmitted trait. My father, who was a truly great Talmudic scholar, also had Tourette syndrome, and all I got from him was the Tourette. So I want to thank my father for that. I'm the head of ZOA, Zionist Organization of America. This is the oldest pro-Israel group in the United States. We have a campus division. We have a legal division. We have full-time lobbyists on Capitol Hill. And I've appeared on almost every major news show in America, BBC and others around the world, and written for almost every major newspaper. I'm going to, as briefly as I can, speak about media-created myths of the Arab war against Israel. Media-created myths. There are dozens and dozens of distortions and falsehoods and myths that are repeatedly stated and written about regarding the Arab war against Israel. That's really the first one. I will never say Arab-Israeli conflict. The media, and almost everyone always does. This is not an Arab-Israeli conflict. This is an Arab war against Israel. This war could have ended a long time ago if the Arabs wanted to. Israel's made every insane and sane concession imaginable, and nothing has worked because of the ongoing war against Israel's very existence. The first major myth, and this is something that Jews repeatedly state, is that Jerusalem is holy to Muslims as well as Jews. This is a complete propaganda lie. It is extraordinary how the media, Israeli leaders, Jewish leaders, I heard the Israeli scouts singing a few months ago from Israel, talking about the holiness of Jerusalem to Muslims and Jews and Christians. It's a lie. What is the truth about the whole so-called holiness of Jerusalem to the Muslims? What is the truth of historically Arab East Jerusalem? And in fact, East Jerusalem is the real Jerusalem that we read about in the Bible and in history. Western Jerusalem is relatively new. Jerusalem was the capital of Israel under King David 3,000 years ago. It has never ever been the capital of another nation in history except Israel. In fact, when the Arabs conquered Palestine in 716 CE, did they make Jerusalem their capital? They captured it. They made Ramlah their capital. They couldn't care less about Jerusalem. Our holiest places, Judaism's holiest places, are in what is called Arab East Jerusalem. Both temples, the Temple Mount, the Western Wall, even before Israel was recreated, Jewish Hadassah Hospital, the Jewish National Library, the Jewish Quarter, Hebrew University, all of them are in Arab East Jerusalem. In fact, of the four quarters, the Jewish, Muslim, Christian, and Armenian quarters, the Muslim quarter is the youngest. The Arabs gave this to the Muslims in the 20s for various reasons. And the Muslims, shopkeepers, kept their stores closed on Shabbos because the Muslim quarter, so-called, was 70% Jewish. The place was filled with Jews, not with Muslims. Since the mid-1800s, and you'll never read about this, the majority of the people living in Eastern Jerusalem, which is the real Jerusalem, were Jews. The majority have been Jews since the early 1800s until they were forced out in 1948, and of course, we've come back. No other city in history has had a Jewish majority except for Jerusalem. In fact, I launched a campaign years ago against Bedeker's Travel Books. This is the oldest and most distinguished travel book company in the world. Their book on Palestine, Israel, Jerusalem were filled with anti-Israel lies. I launched a campaign. I went to Germany. I met with them. They hired me to rewrite it. I rewrote the guide. As part of their payment, I never asked for any payment. I do it for money. They gave me a copy of the Baedeker's Guide to Palestine of 1906. I have it at home, 1906. Like I really need this guide. What did this guide say? It said Jerusalem in 1906 had a population of 60,000 people, 7,000 were Muslims, 13,000 were Christians, 40,000 were Jews. 2/3 of Jerusalem was Jewish in 1906. Not to mention since then and today, and yet you'd think this was filled with Muslims throughout history, according to the media. The Jews face Jerusalem when we daven. When the Muslims daven, they face Mecca. Jerusalem has never been important to Arabs throughout history as a religious entity. In fact, when Islam was at its peak, they made Baghdad, Persia, Egypt, and such centers for science, grammar, poetry, literature, never ever Jerusalem. He said, is Israel serious about peace? Are you serious about peace? You U.S. Jewish leaders, you've got to talk to your Israeli friends and relatives and ask them to search your souls. And you should search your souls, said Obama, to see if you're serious about peace. I don't think you are, he said. How badly do you want peace? You Israelis think this peace business is overrated, said Obama. Their life is good, their economy is good, things are quiet. And he went on. This is what President Obama said to us about a year ago at the White House. My hand went up like a shot. Now, I must say, I'm almost always called on at these meetings. But here at the White House, after he said this, they apparently were afraid they did not call me. They called in 4 people who were clearly very far left politically, who asked softball questions, didn't even mention it. The 3 people who were sitting right next to Obama, the heads of the Conference of Presidents, and the head of AIPAC, who didn't have to be called on to ask a question, was silent. They didn't say a word in response to this outrageous statement by Barack Obama. In fact, even in his speech in Jerusalem, at the Jerusalem Convention Center, he said, I genuinely believe you do have a true partner in President Abbas. I believe that. And Abbas has a track record to prove it. That's an exact quote from his Jerusalem speech. By the way, what I just told you somehow was leaked to the media. And if you Google Obama, search your soul, you'll find the articles about it. Obama, search your soul, you'll find it. That's the only reason I'm allowed to say it to you, because it's already been in the media. I have a number of myths. I'll end with one more myth, if I may. There's no one left here anyway, so no. If there was people here, I would just end here, but there's nobody here, I'll just talk to myself. The myth that a Palestinian state will bring peace. I just wrote an op-ed in the Jerusalem Post about a month ago, railing against this awful, inaccurate, misleading term, two-state solution. Two-state solution more than implies it claims Israel's not a state. Israel's already a sovereign state, so how do you get two-state solution? And it makes it look like both people are getting something. Israel's getting nothing except peace that would happen. So at least you should say Palestinian state solution. That's more accurate. But that implies that Palestinian state is the solution. Do we have proof that that's the solution? When will we realize 100% that's not true? Just remember this. In 1937, they were offered by the Peel Commission 95% of Palestine. Of the rest of Palestine, Jordan had 80% already. Of the rest of Palestine, the Arabs said no. 48, they were going to split Palestine essentially in half, the rest of Palestine. The Arabs said no, went to war. In 2000, they were offered a state when 95% of the West Bank and Gaza, parts of East Jerusalem, they said no. In 2008, Olmert offered, again, a state with 98%. They said no. Between 48 and 67, where they controlled all of Judea and Samaria, all of East Jerusalem, all of Gaza, the Sinai and everything else, did they set up a state? No. When will we realize statehood is not what they're after? Stop saying there's a Palestinian state solution. Stop saying give them a state already. When senators and Congress say to me, Mort, just give them a state already, who can take this? I say, a state won't solve it, even if you want to do that. And I say to senators and congresspeople, Iraq has a state, Libya has a state, Iran has a state, North Korea has a state. Are they lovely? Are we glad that they have sovereignty? Did it make them peaceful and wonderful people in the civilized world? No. Statehood will only strengthen. They're able to promote the underlying culture of hatred and viciousness toward the West. So statehood won't work. Their own emblem that they put out, their own emblem. This is a Fatah emblem. This is 4 years old. The new one is almost the same. This one's a nice color picture. The other one's not. Look at their emblem. It's a moderate Abbas and Fayyad put together. The shape of all of Israel with Arab keffiyeh over all of it. A big picture of their hero Yasser Arafat and a Kalashnikov rifle in the center. This is 4 years old. How many ways do they have to tell you that they don't accept Israel, that statehood's not the issue? And the new one, this is the new one. Again, the shape of all of Israel with the keffiyeh. There's a Kalashnikov rifle here, you can't see it too well, and a key. The key is about, we have to go back to our homes, the refugee issue. They openly give us these emblems, and nobody says a word. Why is it in the front page of every Israeli newspaper, of every American newspaper, European newspaper, saying, this is outrageous, Mr. Abbas, you must retract this. What do you mean by this? Why doesn't the Prime Minister of Israel and the officials hold this up in the Knesset and say, unless you retract this, we cannot discuss anything with you? Because you're making it clear you just want to destroy us. Why should we give you more land to weaken Israel and make it easier for you to harm us? And yet this continues and continues and continues. By the way, every map the Palestinian Authority shows all of Israel as Palestine. Every single map. I have pictures. You've seen enough. So, I was going to talk about refugees. I won't. I was going to talk about apartheid. I won't, which is, of course, an insane slur. There's nothing resembling apartheid in Israel. Arabs are part of every aspect of life, from the Knesset to Supreme Court judges to officials they send around the world. So they have the right to vote. I mean, there's no analogy between it whatsoever. So I will truly end by saying, on these issues about Israel, history has shown that throughout history we've been attacked, vilified, and condemned, and yet the Jews have been right and the whole world has been wrong. Even this woman talks about the Supreme Court and their rulings. Let me tell you, in America we've had many rulings by the Supreme Court that have been overturned years later. Many rulings overturned years later. Separate but equals may be one of the more famous ones. They were allowed to segregate blacks and whites. The Supreme Court ruled you can. Years later they changed their mind. The Iraqi nuclear reactor, when Israel destroyed it, the whole world condemned Israel, including the United States. The whole world was wrong, we were right. When the Jews said that we believe in one God, the whole world was polytheistic. They condemned us, saying we're lazy, is why we want a day of rest. They were wrong, we were right. The whole world said we crucified a Jew, Jesus, a complete lie. They were wrong, we were right. The Crusades, the blood libels, the Talmud burnings in England and France, leading those nations to expel Jews for centuries. The Spanish and Portuguese Inquisitions, the ghettos in the Mortara case in Italy, Dreyfus in France, Bayless in Russia, the Holocaust, Soviet Jewry. Each time the world stood by silently or condemned us or actively participated in our murder, we alone were right while the whole world was wrong. And today, once again, on all the issues about Israel, today, once again, the whole world is wrong and we Jews are right. Thank you very, very much.